Hello, everybody. Welcome to Discover RPG, which means it's Monday. Hope you're having a nice Monday. I am here with a new friend that we've made that we wanted to chat with. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Lynch. I am a graphic designer and illustrator who recently got into game design over the past few years, and I put together a game called Perils and Princesses, which is a fairy tale, rules light role-playing game, and it was on Kickstarter, and it did way better than I thought it was going to do, and it's
Seriously.
almost done, and I have my office is turning into a warehouse, and it's very exciting and also intimidating. And
I have no idea what
I'm
that's
happy to be
like.
here. Yeah.
Turning back and looking at all of my all of my little boxes that I have to sort things.
Yeah, but you have really clever lighting, so it looks like just like a cool.
That's the secret. LEDs mask the clutter that exists. It's great.
No, I have to get in on that because
Yeah, because you guys are doing fulfillment. You're working on fulfillment stuff.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the Kickstarter. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you guys did an amazing job. What was, just out of curiosity, because we've run Kickstarters before, and that's something that we like to talk about a little bit. What was your original budget request on Kickstarter?
So since I had done everything, I was like, if I can get a few people, like I had a kind of community of people that were following along as I made it, on TikTok mostly, and I was like, if I can get a couple $1,000s, like $2,000, and print out a couple, that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be.
But
you made a little more than that.
Yeah, no, it was like 4,000 times that amount or something.
So Perils and Princesses made $62,000 and some change on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff ended up being? Did you guys have stretch goals that you added to that, or is that just funding so you can make merch, or what kind of stuff are you able to do with that now?
Yeah, no, that's this is my first thing I've ever kickstarted, so I did not want
to. More importantly, congratulations on that, because it's not an easy thing.
It is so much work. It is so much work, and there's a lot of lead up, and I'm exhausted. But I didn't want to add stretch goals per se, and add more. I love all the game pieces and stuff. I love dice. I love miniatures. I love box sets. I love extra things. But I was like, I can't handle it if it keeps going, even though it gets so exciting. Yeah. So, it's exciting as the Kickstarter is going off, and it's really tempting to add all kinds of stuff. It's I just use that energy just to add more pages to the book. I was hyped on it. I was like, I'm going to add more stuff. There's not going to be more stretch goals, but everyone who's backing is going to get a cooler thing with more illustrations, more content, more. I did use some of that extra money to bring on an editor. So I was like, I'm making way more of these. I'm making way more of these than I thought. Way more, it's going to be a bigger deal. So I brought in, I had someone, Sean Four, who's on TikTok, who's a professional GM and a writer and just an all around. I needed some expert eyes and brain to look over this thing that's been kind of self-contained and make sure it's going to be clean and nice for everybody. And
that's great.
So I was able to bring, So I just think I was able, because of the money, I was able to make the thing way better. I think it's going to just be a better, cooler book and game for everybody. So
that's great. Yeah, when we've talked to people about doing Kickstarters for TTRPG content specifically, typically editing, getting sensitivity readers, that kind of stuff, where it's we didn't have the or just, hey, we want to be able to pay our artists more. That kind of stuff always feels really good to me. But that's awesome. So you illustrated the whole thing? Because the art's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's where it started. I mean, that's what my background's in is in graphic design and illustration, and it was the story of the birth of Perils and Princesses kind of started with some drawings for sure.
So let's talk about that. Where back up just a hair. Yeah. How much tabletop role playing did you do before making this? Was this a long standing hobby that you had?
Yeah. So it was something that I had returned to over the past few years. So as a kid, very much into like the literary side of it, like the fairy tales and movies and that sort of thing. But as far as role playing goes, you know, just pretty casually playing as a teenager. Some games of D&D. We played. We convinced our friend's older brother to run Ninja Turtles for us, which was really
Awesome.
fun. But you know, the thing was, it was way harder to find groups than it is now. You know, so I remember
Sure.
I remember picking up books just to read them, and like never
Hmm.
actually play it. Like I would get source books just to read, like at the hobby store,
Yeah.
and play. Yeah, and so I played a few games growing up, and then kind of like my life just moved away from that kind of stuff, and I was doing way more like um, you know, I didn't play that many games for many years, and then as my kids kind of got older, and then
Hmm.
the pandemic hit, I was like back, like went back hard into those kind of lonelier hobbies that weren't all, you know, concerts and events and things that I was doing
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
then. It was like um, playing games, reading fantasy books, um, and then I kind of, I guess, reconnected with, like, as I got back into gaming, I had like I'd sort of like phased out of that world while like I don't know, while indie gaming got like bigger and bigger and the OSR happened and all these things where,
Yeah.
and then I got back to it and I was like looking at all these um you know, reading all these books, you know, downloading all these PDFs, looking at all this artwork, and I was like, man, this is the kind of thing that I wish I had before, and now it, like, this has been here this whole time, and I didn't know it, and I want to be a part of it, and um, you know, I've got all these ideas and drawings and artwork and the kind of games I started running with my kids and the kind of games I started running with my friends,
Hmm.
and then it just kind of bubbled up from there, you know.
How old were your kids when you were developing this? Because we have a couple DMs
Yeah,
that
so I've
run
got
games for kids.
yeah, so I have an 11-year-old, and so he was maybe
Oh, okay.
Um, he was probably 8 or
Sure.
9 when we started. He and then when it really happened is when, you know, I was running a game for him and my wife at the for you know, for about a year. We were
Hmm.
playing on and off, and then I had him. Uh, he just seeing how his mind worked. I wanted him to run a game for me, so he run like a solo version. And honestly, the way he was running it was a huge inspiration for Perils and Princesses. Just seeing
Oh
the way
yeah.
he simplified things and the way he um, just like I was like, how do you decide? You know, I was like asked him after the game like how he decided what, you know, what things were. He's like, oh, I just make sure the monsters do something different every time. I was like,
Oh
oh, do you
cool.
like know what they do? He's like, no, I just make sure every turn they do a different thing. Then I just think of it. I'm like, that's brilliant, you know.
That's
Um,
great.
like that's just simple, awesome advice for running a
Hmm.
game, you know, based on
Picking
the
kids'
context.
brains for what they're
Oh
doing
yeah,
in the background is really
yeah,
cool.
absolutely. And then like the thematically, I have a 3-year-old,
Hmm.
and she is a lot of the like um a lot of the drawing happened while watching princess movies with her, and
Oh.
she's such a ferocious, uh, powerful force of a person. And so just seeing her take her brother's toy sword and put on a princess dress and just be completely vibrant I think just like being near her while I was drawing these characters and coming up with the different like abilities and what does it look like when, you know, what would happen if my daughter Alice was playing in a game with Frank, and what would she be like, and what would, so yeah, I think my kids and how they play kind of combined a lot in inspiring sort of the beginning stages of this game.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the game system itself. Um, so if you were gonna pitch the we'll start with the system. If you were gonna pitch the like primary mechanics of the system, what kind of dice rolls are you dealing with, or what kind of like what resolves obstacles in the game?
Yeah, it is loosely based on how the Black Hack does it, but cut in
Okay.
half. So it's a 3-stat D20 roll under, and then special abilities, which are called gift abilities in the game,
Mhm.
are very much inspired by, if you are familiar with the GLOG, the Goblin Laws of Gaming, which is which uses dice for magic that are rolled and then spent. And so you kind of, rather than something like D&D where you have spell slots for how many times, or you can use your ability this many times in a day,
Mhm.
it's sort of a little bit up in the air how many times you have it, because they return to you if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, and then they're
Oh,
spent if
okay.
you have a 4, 5, or 6. So you spend your
Gotcha.
dice, and so depending on, first of all, you can scale your ability with how many you spend, but you might not get them all back, and then they'll be spent for the day. So it's a lot of like risk and reward, kind of how much of your like inner power are you going to use. You might not always have control over that. So a lot of that,
Mhm.
after kind of becoming familiar with how that game system used magic, I thought it made a lot of sense for these princess characters who kind of in kind of fairy tales and those kind of fantasy stories, you might not know how much strength you can muster at any point in time, you know?
Sure. You get those like lucky breaks, something
And
happens,
you,
or you
yeah, you
find
get some
inner
lucky,
strength.
yeah, you find inner strength, or you spent it all and like, you know, you're not able to do what you thought you could in that moment. So yeah, so yeah, it's a really kind of pared down with 3 stats. Everything's roll under. There's like a conscious effort to minimize any kind of algorithms or math that you have to do. It's usually
Sure.
just over under, simple adding. There's not really any floating modifiers. It's supposed to be very kind of, one of my principles while making it was that it was going to be dicey but not mathy. So
Sure.
there's
Sure.
there's
Because
lots of
dice
dice.
is satisfying.
Yeah.
Dice is a very
Yep.
satisfying thing to deal with, but having to carry the one,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Like,
Sure.
wait, what's my proficiency, and then what's the weapon, and what am I adding, and I just playing with new players and playing with kids, it just would halt things so quickly.
Yeah. So
But if
was
it's a roll under, yeah.
so the
go ahead.
game is like designed for how young would you say, or if, and not that you necessarily know this, but it's meant to be like for all ages. The game system is designed for that.
It's supposed to be, I say on the back of the book, I say that it's, you know, for new players, families, and for seasoned gamers alike, and it's for 10 and up with a grown up to help. So
Great.
I think if you played with, you know, I'm sure if you wanted to take a more active role as the grown up and you had a younger kid who was very interested, you could have a lot of fun. I think I've had fun demoing it for families is awesome. Where
Sure.
you've got an older kid, a younger kid, and mom and dad, and just seeing them work together, and seeing how each age group interprets things differently. I think playing with a family is really fun. And, you know, a lot of us love fairy tales and princess stories, and if you want a different kind of indie game with like a lot of flavor, I think a group of grown-ups, I mean, I've had a blast running it for grown-ups too. So
Oh yeah, I can't imagine it's not really fun. So what would you say is it very like Disney in terms of setting? Like what's the kind of genre, or like the feel of it in terms of how you wrote it?
The feel is, so whenever you have those princess stories, I mean, Disney has had a huge influence on that. So there's definitely, like, especially in the art style and the setting, like some of those mid-century, like medieval Disney movies is a big kind of basis, like Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Sword in the Stone, Robin Hood, but not, you know,
but not anthropomorphic.
Yeah, and then from there, like, so that's where it started. But then as I was kind of like trying to bring in and enrich the world, you know, I thought a lot about some of my favorite fantasy books, growing up, and that had a huge influence on it too. So I like to call them, you know, one of the big parts of the game is that it's all about this humble magic, where the little things that you have make a big difference. So you know, unlike D&D where you're tracking these almost superhero like powers and that kind of thing. It's
like
these
discrete little, like like with a wizard, it's like you're writing down these individual spells, you know, with their own set of rules.
Yeah, exactly. So this is more like those little trinkets end up being important, and it really places an emphasis on that, and that comes a lot from these kind of storybook moments, like, I mean, The Last Unicorn, or The Farthest Away Mountain, or and even The Hobbit, like specifically The Hobbit more so than the other Lord of the Rings books, just because of how it's based on, you know, Bilbo Baggins is such a princess. He has, like, Gandalf is his fairy godmother who comes and sends him on the quest, and he's got his, you know,
Bilbo is Snow White. That's a hot take.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely. And so I get into that in the book, where it's like Perils and Princesses gets to you there right away about, like, the type of hero you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's all about these, you know, and it goes beyond gender, and it's more about the genre in terms of like a humble fairy tale adventurer who has these kind of special gifts from their fairy godmother, whoever that is, and then, you know, and has their inner strength, and that's what ends up getting them through these perils. So so yeah, it's like part Disney, but also, you know, the long tradition of Grimm's fairy tales into, like, more mid-century storybooks, and that kind of, there's also, like, a lot of turn of the century retellings of different fairy tales that I really like too. So I've got, like, a long list of books in the back that I, like, referred to while, you know, the Chronicles of Prydain was a big one. You know, Alice in Wonderland, even some newer ones that I kind of been reading a lot of, you know, T. Kingfisher books. Redwall too. Even again, that one's animals. That one's animals.
Sure.
But I think if you've read those kind of storybooks as a kid and watched that kind of movie, like, I think it's really easy to get into the setting.
That is honestly, references is one of my favorite things that I've seen in a couple of indie games. It reminds me a little bit of Fiasco has, like, each campaign setting you might play has, like, a series of like media touchstones, where it's like, okay, you're gonna play this. Like, they have the Christmas one, it's like, well, it's the claymation Rudolph stuff, or like, here are the books, here's the TV, here's the movies. If you want to have a movie night before you play the game, so everyone has the tropes in their head, you can watch or read or experience these things. I love, all of my stuff is so intertextual with all different weird resources that I pull up. I love having that little almost like a bibliography in the back. It's great.
I think it's, like, a good, I mean, even
especially with kids, if you're gonna be pushing to families, it's a really cool idea to be like, oh, if they really liked this game, here are some things they might enjoy reading or experiencing. So I love that. That's a really that speaks to how much thought you've put into this, that I really appreciate. There's so many little choices that I really, really like. I had seen when you talked about the idea of it not having to be a princess specifically by name, but when you're in the character designing, it's like, princess doesn't have to be the title that you have. You could be prince. You could be like, just having that whole list of potential monikers that you could have. Where it's like, you don't have to limit yourself. It's the trope. It's not necessarily specifically a princess, which I really enjoy.
Right. And you know, and a lot of you probably don't, if you're playing into the genre, you probably don't even know you're a princess yet, or going to be a princess.
Sure, you're just you're just the heroine, or you're the person that is, as you said, comes from lowly beginnings, or secretly has these, like, this princess role, but you don't know yet. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why even in the artwork, a lot of times I didn't have them wearing a crown, but I did kind of, like, a crown almost looked like it was sketched on, like almost like a halo,
sort of an implicit,
like a
crown.
halo, like implicit. Yeah, exactly. Like
It's
This
the
is part of their
spirit of a
character.
princess rather than
Yeah.
the accessories of one. I very much enjoy that. Okay, so the 3 stats are resolve, grace, and wits. Those are very fun. And that covers, like, I like when you're abstracting skills, you can get a little bit more general, which gives you a bit more wiggle room and what falls under that. Those are good distinctions though. We already so one of the things that we typically cover is PCs, how you make your PC, and we've covered that a little bit. So you said there's like the type of princess you are, or hold on.
Yeah, so it's based on, and this is pulled very directly from like Sleeping Beauty and kind of some of those Grimm's fairy tales where your class is your gift. It's what gift your fairy godmother has given you. And the gifts are all meant to be like some of the like specific abilities pull from like D&D classic role-playing bits, but a lot of them are meant to be very princessy, and they're kind of reshuffled because it's not about being a fighter as much as it is having or a wizard. It's more about your fairy godmother has given you the gift of a wild heart, right? And so this is kind of a ranger, kind of a druid, but it's a wild heart. So her first ability is the classic princess, like give a little whistle, and then the woodland animals like can come to you, and it's and the more open-ended these are, the more fun they end up being. I've found
100%. Because you have to imagine, like, just like we do, kids have a backlog in their head of what they're gonna refer to. They're gonna be like, yeah, I want to do this thing, like in this thing I've been watching, I want to do that. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing you'd want. Oh, sure, yeah.
No, I mean, and what happens more than once is that ability gets used. They're in a dungeon or tomb or the woods, and it's people call on moles more than you would think, because they'll it's just like, oh, we'll just dig under it, I'll call moles, and it's like, all right, let's do it. Let's whistle for the moles. They all show up and dig you through. But so yeah, beyond that, it's all these different gifts, and they're all meant to kind of cover touch on different, again, like Disney tropes or these kind of like fairy tale. What would happen if Snow White, instead of finding the dwarves and kind of getting back, like what if she went into the forest and just kept leveling up and like kind of became this like, because she already has this like connection and this interesting relationship with the forest that like it comes after her, but then the animals rescue her. Like what happens if she keeps going and on that adventure, and that it could go so many different ways.
Snow White and Shrek with the Led Zeppelin.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean Shrek would be a good one, although I didn't include it. I tried to only include I only included books, even though I could talk about like the movie Labyrinth is a very good one.
Oh,
for
sure.
this kind of idea too.
Yeah. I love kitchen magic, first of all.
Oh yeah.
That makes me very happy. But that also touches on that idea of like some of the sort of, I really hesitate to say like feminine tropes of princesses, but the idea of like, these are the kinds of sort of, it's a mix of adventuring and like kind of the caretaker stuff that princesses sometimes have, that very kind-hearted and taking care of people thing that they have. It's a nice variety. Number 7 answers a question somebody had in chat. Do the princesses have a special animal companion, was something Mouse asked. And yeah, that's an option. You can have a powerful friendship with a devoted animal. Yeah,
and so that was, you'd have to, if you wanted an animal companion, and you didn't want that gift, there's I do include all optional rule for like multi-classing as a
delightful.
So if you'd want to like build your own princess, if that interested you, you could kind of pick abilities from different gifts. If having an animal companion was very important to your character, but you want to do something else. But yeah, that's absolutely one of them. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about these kind of like feminine skills or like softer skills, I just thought that's absolutely what I wanted to make sure kind of was carried throughout all of these, because I mean, there's a giant 2-page spread of all the weapons you can have. Like they're badasses for sure. But like even in like as you have like people of any gender playing this, and specifically like little boys playing this, like I love the idea that they're kind of the skills, like the inner skills that get you through real challenges kind of come to the forefront. And that's something that like even in, again, to bring up Lord of the Rings again, but that's like the story of my life, but the like they are singing to each other that whole time. They are hugging and kissing each other. They are, what gets them through that adventure is not their fighting skills, like hardly ever. It is almost always like any part of that adventure, and like that goes with, you know, fairy tales and you know, the kind of storybook world we're in, is like it doesn't, even if you're skilled with a sword and that's your whole thing, like the important part is the heart you put into that sword fight. It's not not like your literal sword skills. So like
and
I really wanted to make
trust
sure to capture
and friendship and cooperation and that kind of thing, which is not typically what's emphasized in like power fantasies. Right.
Yeah, it's a different kind of fantasy than a power fantasy. It's more of like, it's an adventure fantasy. It's a
Awesome. So all right, so each of the types of each of the gifts have specific broken down abilities that they can do. You have items in the mix. Are talents basically skills? If you're gonna like do a D&D conversion, is it like, or is it just meant to be kind of like, here's a suggestion for the kinds of things that they're good at? Is there like a mechanical part for talents?
Yeah, it's a very broad. There's a mechanical part, but it's very much like a up to the game master and the players to like sort of invoke them, right? Like the talents are supposed to be like those little things that will give you an advantage in a certain situation. So there's not because it's roll under, there's not like a DC like there would be in D&D. Like everything, you have your ability score, but the idea is that a talent might allow you to do something that would be impossible for someone else. It might give you advantage in a certain situation if you have and the rules do call out like specific situations where a talent would help you. Like wayfinding talent is going to give you advantage when you're navigating something. If some of the talents are like more obscure, right? Like they're like brewing or carpentry or like kind of these medieval type fairy tale things. But I've had people play where they were like, I'm like, would my skills in carpentry allow me to know that there's a ledge to grab onto outside of this window because of how it was built and that sort of thing. Like some people like those negotiations with the GM and some people don't, but I think it's kind of fun to have this like hidden talent in your back pocket that you might not know when it would come in handy.
I was just reading through the enchanting voice gift. The fact that they're carrying jars of honey around makes me very happy as someone who does voice acting. That's a very good detail.
Yeah. Yep.
Also, that one of the abilities called an I Want song. It's just very good.
That's the capstone ability for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, all right, so just breaking down from what I'm seeing here. I tried to come in looking at some of the stuff, but then also trying to come in a little bit clean so that I had things to ask you and I didn't just assume everyone in the audience knew. So when so you specifically have sort of this, you list dice and sum in the descriptions because it varies depending on what you choose to roll when you're doing stuff. So you choose a number of dice that you want if it says that, and then whatever you roll on those dice is the sum. But if you get doubles on your dice roll, that, or you have is it any multiples? Because like say you roll 3 dice and you have, so if you have more than one of the same number, then a mishap happens.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fun. No, I like that because it's not depending on the idea of, oh well, you rolled too high or you rolled too low. It's like, no, it is literally just the random potential of you having two of the same number.
Right. It's just and what that does is it really, as you, rather than, again, because we don't have difficulty classes, what it does is as you kind of over channel your ability and you're going to roll 4, it becomes very likely that a mishap, like
right, because you're going to just increase likelihood of a double because of more dice.
A lot. Yeah. So by the time you're rolling 4, like I think it's like 50-50 or even like a 60% chance that it's not going to work. So or a mishap will happen in addition to it working. So yeah, that's again like the gifts you have are a little bit unwieldy unless you just use them a little bit at a time, but they become very, they have the potential to become very powerful as you level up and can do some kind of crazy stuff. But then again, the mishaps are fun. They're all kind of fun and silly too anyway. So.
Yeah, no, they're delightful. I'm seeing some of these. Mechanically, what is having advantage on something? Is that just rolling your dice?
Rolling 2, and it's the 5e. It's rolling 2, okay. but taking the lower because they're rolling down.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Let me see. So I'm just going through here. The audience can see the pages as I'm scrolling through the different. Yeah, the art is so pretty. You did such a nice job with the font selection as well. Like the text you picked gives that feeling you're going for, but is not illegible, which happens sometimes when you go into like Gothic or old style.
Oh yeah,
fonts.
These luckily there's so many talented people making awesome fonts, and I can kind of pull some newer ones and some older ones. And yeah, I really wanted to have fun with it. I wanted that fractured fairy tale. I wanted it to look like. Again, like this book filtered through all the historical references, so it came from medieval lettering through 60s 70s version of medieval, right?
Kind of has a zine vibe to it too, which is really fun.
Yeah, and then like I wanted all the
artwork
to have like
and stuff.
For sure. Like those old like public domain engravings, and then like all the artwork kind of looked like a coloring book or a kid like scribbled in on top of an illustration that was like kind of more a classic one. So
yeah, no, I definitely get the like 60s like the sort of sketchy quality to some of the to how some of the characters are drawn or how the princesses are drawn. Let's see what we have in here. Okay, so what's in your purse? What resources you have? Yeah, I saw the frying pan. I was like, Tangle definitely feels like the kind of princess that you're really vibing with in this, where it's.
I love Tangle.
they're not like super badass warrior, but like will throw down if necessary.
Yeah,
not looking for violence, but like, hey, I'm gonna be resourceful. I'm gonna figure it out. So that's really good.
She says like, Rapunzel has crazy talents too.
Oh gosh,
if you're gonna build Rapunzel, because she's the whole opening of that movie is her listing all her skills. She's
definitely
so
a bard. She's definitely got like jack of all trades going. All right, let's see. Advantage, disadvantage. No, it's great. You have a really nice layout of all of the rules. Like it's really easy to kind of break down what the different parts of the system are, which is really nice. And I also, and this is just me, I like that there's different dice in the mix too. Like you're not just rolling one type of dice, because it's fun to have a set. And
that was deliberate. That was absolutely deliberate. That was appealing to new players and kids, because nothing's
like, ooh, new shapes,
Nothing's worse than like getting the kid their new dice and they don't get to use them all when they play. Like, oh, here's all the dice, and they're like, when do I use this one? When do I use this one? When do I use this one? You're like, well, you kind of don't. It's like, oh,
darn, why didn't I get this whole set then?
Some people get bummed about that, because it's like when you start out, you can't tell which one's which. You're like, which one's the D12 and which one's the D20 and which
I've
one's
gotten
the D10.
used to saying, okay, roll the pyramid, Okay, roll the one that looks like a soccer ball. Roll.
Yeah, that's why I've got a page where I have like little pictures of them too.
Oh, good.
Where like it's like a little like this.
Oh,
is
I see it. Yeah. I see that.
Yeah,
that's very good. So let's see. So let me see. I've got on my list of things that just sort of talk about from a system perspective. So I just got to the leveling up section. Do you think that what have you run like slightly longer campaigns with it just to see how it feels? Because it sounds like you've been doing some playtesting.
I haven't run any for very long.
Okay.
I've done yeah. So we will see now that I'm going to learn. This is the thing. I'm going to learn so much more now that I'm sending out like than I ever could possibly playtest. But yeah, the leveling up, I mean, it's milestone. It's up to the table when everyone gets a new ability. There's only 4 levels. It's designed to kind of be customizable that way. It's not.
Sure.
I don't think the system lends itself well to XP, even though I think XP can be really cool.
Well, there's ways of abstracting it where you could. I personally like milestone. I'm a very narrative heavy GM, so I like saying, all right, this is the part of the story that feels like you have learned something. You're in this part of the act, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I tend to like that. So I think that works really well for this. And you do have a note for one shots because one of the questions that we often ask people with new systems is, what's your ideal conditions for playing? Where do you think this system really sings? Is it in one shots? Is it in mini campaigns or big campaigns? Like what kind of game style do you think really fits well with what you designed?
I think it's like a mini campaign. If you wanted to play through all 4 levels, I think if you played through all 4 levels in like 9 or 10 sessions, that would be an ideal experience. I think if you're going to play 1 or a 2 shot, I think because the level 1 abilities, you don't get any mishaps. It's more that humble beginning. I think like that's like level 1's a great intro, and then like through 2 and 3 is like again like the sweet spot. So I like to say if you're going to play it in 1 session, just do level 2. And you get to make more choices. And then all like the level 4 abilities for everybody are very customizable or super powerful or like a big capstone. So I think beyond that, like you could, if you wanted to keep playing, I recommend like just finding more magic items and that kind of thing. Because it's really, if you really like, it's there's and they lived happily ever after should kind of be built into it, where you close the book a little bit. So it's like,
well, and you can also pull an Into the Woods Sondheim thing where it's like, yeah, and they all lived happily ever after until the next thing happened. And then you have to come back out of it. It's like, no, we're just going to do the Disney sequel.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that kind of leads into how I have character death, because there isn't really character death. Like I wanted it to be, have these like kind of cool consequences, but and so you kind of get like it's like a 3 strikes you're out system with the trauma, and then at the end it's like it's kind of up to you what happens. You could retire your character, and then they're just, which I always like that idea of having like a friendly PC that you once played with showing up later.
Oh my god, deep enchanted sleep is very good. That's delightful.
So whatever happens to your character, it's kind of up to you and your table how it ends for them, if it does end.
Let's see. Okay, so you do have like a spell list.
I do.
Now, are these spells that are specific to a type, or can everybody do these potentially?
So everyone can do them potentially. The spell list is there for monsters, for bad guys to draw from.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's also there for kitchen magic, has a couple of them depending on their with their level 1 ability. They have like random goodies that cast a spell.
Nice.
And the other thing is that magic is based on items. So it kind of tells you can have, if you wanted to build there's a couple examples, but if you wanted to build a relic or a sigil or a spell book into your game as something that your characters find, that would allow them to cast one of these spells.
I see. Yeah. Cool. All right, awesome. That's a nice system for that.
Yeah, so there's not a wizard, there's not like a spell class casting, like a full caster or anything like that. Like Kitchen Magic has her own unique things, and then some spells, and then the rest of the spells would come from magic items. Or I guess the last way you would get it is if like you had if you had an open-ended ability like the Enchanted Voice where she has the I Want song. I would see, because that ability is so customizable, you could say, I want to be able to cast spells, or I want to be able to cast this spell. And that would be their ability for their, because basically you get with that gift, your final ability is you get one wish, basically.
Nice.
So whatever that wish
I can see that being a late stage game ability.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the recharges for magic items are also very good, for relics are very good. Doing house for an old woman is a very good recharge. Anytime I can make the mechanics fit into the fiction, every opportunity I could do that, I really wanted to. There is and you said that most of the references you put at the end of the book were books mainly. This also gives a very obviously Princess Bride is a book, but
oh yeah.
I'm getting heavy Princess Bride elements from the idea of the ways you have to do to get your magic back. It's like, this is its own little adventure you need to do in order to justify this.
I love the Princess Bride movie. I have the Princess Bride listed as one of the references. I think it's a fantastic book too. I
haven't gotten a chance to read it. It's like on my to-do list eventually to read it.
It has a different tone than the movie in that it's way funnier. It's funny in like a Terry Pratchett kind of way, or like it's like a fantasy Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's all these asides about how the world works. It's brilliant. I love it.
Delightful. I'll have to put it higher up on my to-do list. Because I'm looking through monsters right now to kind of see what's going on with all the classics you got.
Yeah, it's sort of a mix of role-playing classics and fairy tale classics, and kind of where they intersect too.
I have to give you significant props on the Evil Queen. That is a gorgeous piece.
Oh, thank you. That was one where that was one I did after the Kickstarter started, and I was so hyped up, and people were asking about stretch goals and things, and it's like, no, I'm just gonna keep drawing monsters and see how many I can get here. And I was embarrassed that I didn't have an Evil Queen, and I added a unicorn too, which I didn't have.
Yeah, the unicorn was really pretty.
Thank you. The cool thing about the unicorn is the different traits.
I saw that. It's great.
Yeah, so there's a D6 table for different personality traits.
I'm such a sucker for random tables, so this is right up my alley. I love it. It's just I always come up with possible ideas, so random tables are great.
And even if you don't pick them randomly, having while you're DMing something, having a list of stuff is awesome. And it's just fun. It's fun to read, and it's fun to write them too. As I was doing, that's kind of how it started too, is as I was doing the drawings, I was making these lists of stuff, and that I wanted to capture this particular feeling in this particular world. And it just was easy to make lists of what kind of gifts would a fairy godmother give somebody, and then it just kind of grew from there.
What was I gonna say? So I run I have a magic table that I use when I run D&D. That is technically, it originally was a D10,000. And somebody made a gigantic spreadsheet of all sorts of things that could happen. It's so unwieldy. I had to recruit a couple of friends to help me filter the spreadsheet, because some of them are campaign ending, where it's all right, you crashed the moon into the planet. That's all
Yeah.
right, cool.
Yeah.
So
Now
I
let
can
me write a whole new apocalypse campaign. Yeah.
essentially I had to make filters that were like, all right, party killer, all right, campaign ender. But there are so many. What I end up using it now is I have someone roll on a random number generator, a D10,000, and then I go to find that number, and I usually look within 5 of that number, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have found, like, even if it's not technically the exact number they've rolled, to even get within 5 of that number and find something that so perfectly fits being, you know, dramatic irony or something that just works really, really well with something the character's struggling with. I've had such wonderful happenstance happen because of that table. Where it's just so perfect.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, I think part of why I like playing games, and I think what a lot of people playing, and I like running games and playing games, is that like that letting your brain make those connections between random things is so satisfying. Like our brains want to, that's part of playing, is like what is like imagining how these things are connected is so much fun and so much satisfying. It's so satisfying. So yeah, random tables for sure, because that's the fun of it for me. Is like,
as someone with ADHD, the random connections between things is just where I live. So it works really, really well. The best example that I had that happened was my party was at a fancy dinner party doing a heist. There was an ice sculpture I put in the room that apparently was secretly holding like an evil skull in the sculpture. And then next session, the session after that, the party had the opportunity to magically steal something from a distance from a character. And the problem was, once you stole it, your name was projected in that person's head. They might not make the connection that, oh, this thing disappeared the moment I heard your name, but the party member who did wild magic, I made her roll, and within 3 of the things she rolled, it said, an ice sculpture of the caster appears where you cast. And I went, huh, what? Okay, cool. So not only does this guy know your name, there's now an ice sculpture of you in his office, and it referring back to the ice sculpture you were fixating on during the last session. It could not have been more amazing.
Good.
Yeah, it just gives me so much endorphins when that kind of thing happens.
Oh yeah, for my D&D group, one of my players, she's a barbarian, and we found like a homebrew path that is like a wild magic barbarian. Maybe it's homebrew, maybe it's from one of the supplements, I don't know, but I just love, like, whenever she rages, like, let's roll and see like what wacky thing she's gonna do. I'm all about that.
So one of our chat members, Mouse, said, I've been prepping fortune teller things for my campaign, and seeing all the options being given for potential readings has been making my brain go wild. Yeah, I actually gave Mouse all of my fortune telling tools, because I have tables. I have tables for tea leaf reading. And so it's like pictures, what are all the kinds of pictures of things you could see, and then what does that potentially mean? So it's a lot of like kind of not cold reading, but like hot reading people, where you know a lot about the characters, so your fortune tellers can say a lot of very insightful things using the random abstractions of the shapes that they see in the tea. So I have a lot of that kind of stuff. I've been collecting different modes of fortune telling. It's been really, really fun to do, like tarot cards and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I love tarot. I love, I mean, even just as like someone who's really into the visuals of how these things come together, and like just because tarot, with like making visual associations, and again making connections between these, like the symbolism of these different pieces. I'd love to do a supplement of a new class that had like more purely like a seer or a fortune teller or someone or a princess. Down the line, I'd love to do a class like that for this game.
You get visions, yeah. I just discovered, and this always happens because I just find them on my like YouTube feed. I'll just scroll through. There is a style of, I think it's a German tradition of putting liquid metal into water and you use the shape that it cools into as part of a sort of divination thing, where
That's
it's
so
like
cool.
instead of reading tea leaves, you're reading the shape that the metal turns into. And
Oh, I love that.
I'm like, that's the most badass like dwarven thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's so good. But
Okay.
yeah, so that's a
I
thing
got a
that
new
I've.
thing to look up tonight.
It's really cool. Yeah. Oh
That's
no.
awesome.
Mouse has made their party panic by implying that there is a magic deck appearing soon.
Oh, uh-oh. That'll be
Yep.
fun.
Yep. I have a lot of decks of cards that I use for that kind of thing.
That's great.
So you have an introductory adventure that can be used. So the Rosewood Crown, is that, let's see, so a party level 1 to 2. Okay, so it's like the beginning adventure that you could use.
Yeah, it's like a great it's just a little dungeon crawl just to get everyone. It's a tutorial adventure.
Oh, the little isometric map's so cute.
Oh, thanks.
That's very sweet.
I was like dying to do an isometric map, but yeah. So there's a quick kind of little fairy tale dungeon crawl to get you going, and then there's some prompts after that for placing that into like a hex crawl or a larger world. There's like just some like a rumors table, a random encounters table, some like prompts for ideas for factions if you wanted to like have like a little fairy tale world happen for you.
Sure.
It's not all fleshed out, that part of it, but the intro adventure has is a pretty detailed little mini dungeon for you.
That's really great. No, I love that. Travel times is really important. I'm really bad at travel times.
Yeah, I get that was, so that's part of it being I always say this game is gritty and pretty, because there's some really good games that probably do a better job than this one of those kind of soft skills that we talked about and like those inner strengths. Like there's the excellence, there's, I mean, thirsty sword lesbians to some extent, and like there's lots of games like that. But I also want, and I kind of, and I do like that, but I like the gritty travel time stuff and like tracking your torches, because I feel like it grounds it in that like that humble magic that like where that little stuff is important. That little stuff is important, even if it's just stuff like how much food you have and how long it takes you to get through the woods. Like I like that being a big deal. So like even though it's, some people hate encumbrance and that sort of thing, I just thought it would be, I think it's important for just how this game works that you like can't carry everything you want to carry sometimes, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, let me see. I think I had one other specific thing I wanted to ask. Oh, okay. So, what would you say? So we've often asked this in different ways. One way we used to ask this was, what's the game good at? What's the game not good at? But I find it's a little more useful to say, what kind of play styles or stories or games works best in this system? So what kind of game do you think this is really keyed in towards? And we've talked a little bit about it already.
Yeah.
The idea of sort of having that agency, but telling a small, like lower scope magic story. Something humble is a really good way to put it.
I mean, I could see this working again. I think, like you said, like humble, like it's built, like the intro adventure is just like a little dungeon crawl, and I think it would work. It works pretty well with like, if you wanted to find like if you wanted to find an adventure module to like kind of adapt to this, a lot of like low level adventures or like mini hex crawls or like mini or like mini dungeons work really well. Like anything made for like level 1 Cairn, or like there's some really good old school essentials like Dolmenwood ones fit really well with this.
Okay.
Like that's their fairy tale setting, and you could plot Perils in, like if you did a little bit of work like shifting some of the stats over to fit with this, like you could plot Perils and Princesses in there and they would do great. I think you could eventually, if you wanted to play longer and save the kingdom, you totally could do that, or you could just, save your friend or go, get the magic thing or whatever like fairy tale inspires you. I think basically if you have a fairy tale story that you're inspired by, you could totally have it happen here. And that would be perfect.
Amazing. Let's see, anything else? Oh, so the Kickstarter's over, but you do have it still open for late pledging, correct?
Yeah, so I think there's the Backer Kit store is going to be up for a little bit more. I'm trying to like leave it on as long as I can. I ordered all the books, but I ordered enough extra where I think like if a few more people wanted to get in on it at this point, they could.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I put the link in the chat if anybody wants to check out the late pledging on Kickstarter, and also the main website so you can see stuff. Is there anything else that you would want to say to our viewers just in terms of like pitching the game or why you think that what was there anything sort of missing in the tabletop space that you feel like this kind of fills, or like you really think that there's like that's really kind of special about the system that you think people deserve a chance to experience?
Yeah, I mean, I was just starting to touch on that a little bit, where it's like, I think it's a good game for families and for kids, but I feel like it doesn't talk too down to them. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like it's just I really, really tried to hit the sweet spot where it captures that fairy tale magic, but in a way where if it's not, I don't know, it's gritty and pretty. It's not too cutesy. It's fairy tale. It's fun. It's whimsical, but it still has that adventure game feel. And I think it's all about the characters and that.
You say it really well in the title. I mean, to both having the sort of fairy tale aesthetic, but not shying away from the fact that there is peril in the story. Yeah. Is a nice balance where it's like not quite to the degree of a Brothers Grimm sort of telling, but I think honestly Princess Bride's a really good, or Last Unicorn's a really good example where it's like there is peril, there is danger, there are fraught circumstances, but it is in its essence meant to be this kind of slightly wholesome or like gentle story of princesses with a lot of agency.
Right, like the world is a scary place and it is dangerous, but you have the tools to get through it,
Yeah.
And,
well, I love it. So I think we're a little we're kind of near the end of our time, and I don't have I'm honestly just like really psyched to try the game out at some point. As we often do with people who come in with new systems, we bring people in very specifically like, oh, we're backing that and we want to talk to them because we want to play this.
Great.
Either you or us, you are more than welcome if you ever are interested in running a game on our network or having someone run it for you. Please, we'll talk later about it, but we would love to have a Perils and Princesses game on the show. It's fun. We should, let's do it. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. We'll talk about it. So anybody in the audience, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching on the VOD, maybe there will be a Perils and Princesses thing out already, but you don't know. But please check us out. Also, shout out to our sponsors. We're sponsored by World Anvil. If you are a game creator, a novelist, a GM, and you're looking for a place to have a repository of all the information about the world, you want to take it out of your head and put it somewhere physically to share with your players or your audience, you can check out World Anvil. We use it for the World of Vale, which is our homebrew setting. So you can check out more on there. There's going to be a lot more stuff coming up. Me and a couple of our friends of the network are going to be putting together some resources for people. If you are looking to talk, we've talked about it here on DRPG, different fantasy species and their culinary traditions. So we're going to be putting a bunch of those, lots of random tables, but defining both the types of food, but also like preparation and preservation techniques for different types of fantasy groups. So like the idea of, well, goblins are clearly really good at hot pot, giant bowl, throw everything in it and you're eating around the bowl. Like that's definitely what they're doing. Or like being very good at fermentation and like that sort of preservation style. So we have a whole bunch of that's going to be coming out, and we're also currently working on another kind of supplement on World Anvil that's going to be public works. So the things that your players always ask you questions about, how does plumbing work here? What do you do with the homeless? Like, how do you deal with homelessness? Is that even a thing? So we're going to be creating a bunch of like public works factions that you can insert into your own games with locations and NPCs and stuff. Whether it's the water company or the pest control or those sort of things, but like with that fantasy bent. So we're going to have some of that out. Also, you'll be able to get access to that stuff by joining our Patreon. Either as a free or a paid member, you can get access to that through Patreon. So you can find us at patreon.com/nerdsmith. So World Anvil, Die Hard Dice is one of our other sponsors. You can get 10% off with the code Nerdsmith. We are giving away Die Hard Dice sets on our Thursday night show, Signals of the Lost, which is an Outbreak undead zombie game that Alora is running. We've got 4 more episodes, so every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we have some really kick-ass dice sets that we're giving away for that. And you can get those giveaways if you're in the chat during the show, so take a look. We are affiliates of Hero Forge. Everybody who watches this show regularly knows how obsessed I am with Hero Forge and making characters on it. I will be putting a stream out soon called Hero Forge Facelifts, where I use the new face customizer to do like, all of my players tend to do like celebrity lookalikes for their characters. So I'm taking celebrity faces and trying to get as close as I can in the Hero Forge system. To be announced, the stream date for that. And finally, on here on DRPG, we're specifically sponsored by Grinding Coffee. They're a Black LGBTQ owned business. They sell coffee and coffee subscriptions. They're a really cool group of people. Alora is about to get a bunch of coffee from them, and so she'll be reporting back with her findings for some of their flavors that she was really excited about. And you can get 10% there too if you use DRPG as your code. All the links are in chat. Please check them out. And Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited about Perils and Princesses. It's a beautiful book, and congratulations on the Kickstarter. It's a huge accomplishment, especially first time out of the gate. And I'm so excited for you to do really fun things with the system and just kind of see it out in the wild. That's gonna be crazy for you probably.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It was great talking, and I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week. We're doing Nerdsmith Pixel, so we're playing video games. We're back in Baldur's Gate 3 with the gang. We have 4 people, and we're doing some like kind of roleplay heavy Baldur's Gate. So it gets a little madcap. And this week on stream, we have our Outbreak Undead continues on Thursday, and on Friday we have the Dragon's Crown, which is Franz's 5e stream, which is, I think it has deviated quite a bit from Tomb of the Dragon or Horde of the Dragon Queen and Tyranny of Dragons, the Tiamat adventures in the official D&D books. I heard some shit went down last week, including one of the party members not making it. So we'll see how next week goes. But you can see them on Friday nights at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night. Have a safe week. Be good, be smart, make good choices, and above all, do us a favor and be good to each other. See you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
And when I say hold yourself, I want all of you get ready to stop.